Patients Engage is an online platform which engages patients and caregivers to improve management of chronic diseases. The key objective is for people to realize that their lived experiences matter, and they can make decisions that can improve their quality of life and motivate others, and as well as the feeling that they're not alone, right? When people are reading the stories, that's the number one comment we get, that people relate to the experiences of others more than anything else. So, as I said, today's focus is living productively with schizophrenia. We're doing this in partnership with SCARF as well as Atmanirbhar. Our panelists today are Ganesh Rajan, who is from Chennai. He's a management consultant and an author. He was diagnosed when he was 19, so it's almost 40 years. We have Sriram, who is 62, also from Chennai, is a manager at Atmanirbhar retail stores. He was diagnosed in his 40s. We have Dr. Mangala, a consultant psychiatrist from SCARF, Chennai, and Sonia Sims, case manager and rehab therapist from SCARF. And I am Aparna. I'm the moderator for this session. Just a quick recap on both our partners here as well. SCARF India was founded in 1984, and it's a center of refuge in terms of rehab and research in disorders of the mind, founded by Dr. Sarda Menon, and they are a contributing lead partner for content and resources for our mental health, and specifically the SCARF community page. And Dr. Mangala herself has been very actively involved in this. Atmanirbhar stores are run by Asha Homes. So they were both founded by Ratna Chibar and Tanya Dutt in 2012. Ratna has been a caregiver to a sibling with mental illness, and she's also an entrepreneur running a manufacturing unit. And Tanya has been working with people with mental illness, plus she also is an entrepreneur. And so they work with Asha, a 40-bedded residential rehab home where Sriram stays as well. And they also run these retail stores to improve employment opportunities for their residents. So quick recap on schizophrenia. I think a lot of people have heard about it. It is a chronic, severe, multifaceted and complex disorder of the mind. It affects mainly, it starts to affect in the beginning of, in the post-productive period of life of people, largely between 15 and 35. And it has a range of symptoms. During the course of this conversation, you will hear some of these symptoms being talked of, and you can go to our website for more of this. Most people have heard of the positive symptoms in terms of delusions, hallucinations, and hallucinations are not just of the voices, which is the most commonly known, but it affects other organs as well. It could be sense, smell, and touch and so on. And there are issues around lack of clarity of speech, or in terms of behavior patterns or catatonic behavior. It's not as common, but again, you'll hear about it today. And similarly, there are negative symptoms which don't get as much attention, but they do exist. And again, it's important to be aware of them. It's also important to understand that persons with schizophrenia can also feel depressed and anxious. So it's, just to kind of be aware. Again, a guidance to our attendees who are following us. The information discussed here is based on experience of the panelists and is not to be taken as medical advice. Even if medications are mentioned, please consult your doctor in terms of what's appropriate for you. This session will be recorded, so if you're logged into Zoom, you can post your questions on the chat, and if you're on Facebook, post your comments on the live feed. Again, if you want privacy on Zoom, you can rename yourself. If you like to share, you can always write to us at editor@patientsengage.com. And you can find us on our website, our Facebook page, Twitter, YouTube, and we also have an Android app, right? So let me not take too much time and get back to we would start with we would do a series on mental illness, as well as we've started with schizophrenia this month because it is Schizophrenia Awareness Week, and which just finished yesterday. Let's start with our panelists. Let's start with you, Ganesh. If you can just walk us through your first symptoms that led to the diagnosis of schizophrenia.
Started with olfactory hallucination, that is, smells emanating out of nowhere. It could be perfume, it could be garbage, a whole plethora of smells. And then I started hearing auditory hallucinations, people talking in asides, ventriloquist style, You won't move the mouth, but I could still hear the voices and voices out of thin air. I was in a relationship with a girl then, so I began to be suspicious and doubtful of her. At about that time, I had an accident. After the accident, I began to doubt everybody. I felt that anything I say would be misconstrued and used against me. So I just clammed up for 2 days, 2 nights and 2 days. And that sort of sent a flag up to caregivers, and they said there's something wrong with this guy. And on the third day, when I broke my silence, I had a whole lot of bizarre events to relate, including a cat jumping on the windowsill in the middle of the night, and a reflection of somebody else in the mirror, and so on. It was diagnosed as schizophrenia at that point in time.
Okay. And Sriram, you got diagnosed much later, right?
I have a lack of sleep. For 2-3 days, I could not sleep properly. Lack of sleep. Then I was having loss of memory. I could not remember the date, month, and year. And suddenly I lost my memory and lost my sleep. Then after some few days, this symptom continued. Then I was taken to a general physician. He recommended me to a psychiatrist, and a psychiatrist diagnosed me to be having a schizophrenia. I was also afraid of people around me. Whether they will do harm to me or something like that. Suddenly I developed these things. Then I was feeling mentally agitated. Then suspicious about people around me, fear of people, and lack of sleep, my loss of memory, partial loss of memory, not remember the date, month, and year, and all this. No clarity of thinking. So all these things were there in me, and later on, a psychiatrist diagnosed me to be having schizophrenia.
Right. Dr. Mangala, these are fairly common symptoms. Are there any surprising symptoms or, lesser known symptoms that people should be aware of?
I don't think there are any specific symptoms that is very surprising when it happens in schizophrenia, because generally all those symptoms that they described, as we could notice in their narrative, it all started with very vague symptoms. There are some fears, some sort of a difficulty in concentration, difficulty in understanding certain things, a vague confusion, not very sure if what is happening around them is something that they're able to understand, some vague anxiety, depression, all these things can be there. But generally there is an associated biological component where there are sleep disturbances, changes in their appetite, changes in the way they feel about doing what they are used to do. So there's a lack of interest in doing all their routine activities.
Right.
Any change in their routine which lasts for more than 2 or 3 weeks can be suggestive of a serious underlying mental health problem, for which it is best to seek help early, or at least clarify if things are okay or not.
Right, right. Okay. So in terms of, once you were diagnosed, how did it affect your life? You talked of the symptoms, but what were the effects of those symptoms on your day-to-day living? And, were there side effects of medicines? Sriram, do you want to talk about that first?
Yes, ma'am. When I underwent all these symptoms, then the psychiatrist prescribed me Largatil, Serenase, Espazin Plus and all. But I was feeling what in my banking, initially in my banking career, I could not remember anything despite the medicine. Could not do anything. I was sleeping throughout the day, and my hands were shaking, my legs were shaking. So all these things persisted for a long time, but still I used to take drugs, medicines prescribed by the psychiatrist. But then there was no relief, and finally I had to resign my bank job, and then.
Right. Okay. And Ganesh, how about you?
I can relate. I can empathize with Sriram. With regards to medicine, just increasing the dosage may not help at all. Some manufacturers recommend a greatly higher range of doses, but I think they may not have a benefit. Like Sriram was experiencing, you just feel drugged to the point of stifling the symptoms without being able to function with the medication. So if the body is not able to respond to one kind of medication, I think another can be tried. In the matrix, one can determine, and Dr. Mangala may be able to comment on this. So if in 6 weeks there is not significant, but any improvement at all, one need not blindly increase the dosage and try something else. The new antipsychotics help us to shorten this turnaround time for testing. I think that's something that is very important. When I started at age 19, and now I'm 58, 59, these antipsychotics have much lesser side effects, and it can be there are also a wide variety now available, and
Right.
can be prescribed depending on the patient profile.
Right. So, Dr. Mangala, what is your advice to patients, because they do struggle with some of the side effects? So, what is the best approach for them to work with their doctor, or how should they go about it in terms of getting to the right level of medication?
I think, yeah, it was those days when Sriram and Ganesh were started on medication. We didn't have a great many options when it came to choosing antipsychotics. But now we have a very wide range of newer antipsychotics. They are not necessarily the ideal drug, but they are much better in terms of side effect profile and in the way they target symptoms. There are medications which are specifically designed to target the negative symptoms, the cognitive symptoms, with very less side effects. So I think today we seem to get a better response to medication, and because of the options, we don't have to really stick on to a drug that doesn't suit a person anymore. If there are very difficult side effects, side effects which are seriously affecting a person's routine, then we have the luxury of shifting from one drug to the other. And I think it would be best if the doctor and the client, they have an open discussion about what drug would suit them and what they think would be comfortable for them, both financially and symptom management wise and side effect profile wise. So if that is an open discussion, I think it would be in the best interest of the person, and the recovery and the ability to stay on continuing medication would be much better. The compliance improves if the side effect profile is well managed.
Right. Okay, thanks. Ganesh, you also because you were diagnosed when you were 19, did that affect your, academics at that point? And how did you deal
Absolutely,
with that?
absolutely. I mean, I lost three academic years. Uh, I mean, it was a professional degree. In fact, the stress of the relationship with that girl, which I had mentioned, and the studies put together, I I was totally stressed, and I actually believed that if I get to the examination venue, the answers would be plucked out from the air. I didn't have to study. I mean, I was that confident that yes, just from imagination itself.
Right.
Uh, I started taking medicine. One thing which I think I should mention here is that I realized that if a perception does not allow me to be productive and socially collaborative, it's a kind of a perception that should be ignored. And that was the approach I took to anything I felt in terms of hallucinations, in terms of delusions, and things like that. I tried to apply this. And I did take my medicine regularly, steadfastly. And after 3 years, I went back, did my exams with some tutoring. I passed out creditably. And yeah, I got my job, I got married, I got children. I mean, I can say that yes, if the right thing is done at the right time, then it can make a world of difference to the patients.
Right. Right. Sonia, you work as a case manager and a rehab specialist. Employment in the well-being and self-esteem of persons with schizophrenia specifically.
See, the role of employment in patients with any mental illness itself is employment is like one of the major concerns of individuals with mental illness, and employment also kind of gives a sense of personal identity. It helps the patients to become part of the society and the family in which they are in. They're able to contribute to their family. It gives them a sense of independence and also allows them to be productive. So, since schizophrenia affects at a very young age, where individuals are mostly into their education or at the level of where they are going to seek employment, since schizophrenia affects most individuals in that area of life, employment becomes one of our major concerns in rehabilitation. So yeah, when you start working on employment, allowing training for employment, uh, providing placements, you notice that that is where clients are coming in for rehab. That's where they want to participate into rehab itself. So,
Right.
so most of the clients even have a sense of satisfaction over the entire treatment only when only when they are employed. I
Right.
had this one client who was only satisfied after he was employed and earning a minimal salary, that he was even important as a person itself. So yeah,
Right.
employment has a very big impact on one's well-being and self-esteem.
Okay. So I guess one of the issues that happens with people with mental illness would be that there'll be breaks in employment, or there will be absences, or there's the question of how much do you share with your employer. So obviously, in the case of Sriram, his an issue.
Job matching itself, when you start looking at the kind of qualifications of the client, what the capacity of the client, what kind of jobs is that person looking for. So it you have to ensure that the challenges are as less as possible before you even place a client. And yes, there we have had instance, most of our challenges where there have been a lot of breaks in employment for clients. It can be due to different reasons, because of symptoms rise, or side effects, or our client is having stress at his workplace. It can be many reasons as to why a client has breaks in his employment. But I think, see, the one of the ways in which you can deal with this challenge is, one, you can have frequent contact with your client, and so that in every review you work with these challenges that the clients are facing in their workplace itself. And when it comes to disclosure, I think the best way to work with disclosure is ask the client whether he is ready for disclosure to the employers. Usually what we do here at SCARF is we have a discussion with the clients whether they want, what they want to disclose, and if they're even willing to disclose. And if they are, then we do take the clients, we have a discussion with the employers and the client together itself, and we explain the situation. And there are employers who have who we have disclosed to, who have we noticed to have been supportive employers. And so when we have supportive employers, the breaks in employment also kind of reduces.
Right.
And of course, when we do disclose about the client's treatment and illness itself, we do give a small brief history on what the client has been facing in his life and things like that. So yeah, it is good to have contact with your employer as well as your client, frequent contact. I think here the level of communication and the quality of your communication is very important.
Right, right. Ganesh, you did not share your diagnosis with your employers at any
No,
point. So,
I did not. I did not.
right,
I feel it's the merits of work that should decide. It's crucial that the patient wins the confidence of his employer. All that matters is the ability to work and mingle with others at work. I don't see it as a lie. I don't think one should look at it as a moral issue, uh, because it's not, in general, not many people are aware of schizophrenia. So it's kind of associated with mental deficiency and mental inability, and not viewed under the same lens as, let us say, diabetes or hypertension. So, yes, the stressors at work should be handled at work. The stressors in relationship and other aspects and symptoms have to be handled with the psychiatrist and the caregivers, the family, and what have you. Uh, so, yeah, I mean, if you have done enough and you can disclose once the confidence of the employer is evident. So it's a take. I mean,
right.
of the positive symptoms to a large extent, and though not completely gone, they are there. I refer to this as something called fringe symptoms. It's my own coinage. When there is a lot of stress or there's a lot of stimulation, see a movie or get into a very intense discussion. Following that, for 5 minutes or five to 10 minutes, whatever, there may be these hallucinations which happen on the fringe of the senses. They generally die down in 5 or 10 minutes after happening. But the important thing is that they don't require any special medication. All you have to learn is to ignore it and go on. I mean, it's just something which is temporary. People who wake up from deep sleep and get up in the morning, some of them, I'm told, they still hear voices before they're fully wake. I've had, I have days when I go back home and the entire day. Can you hear me now? I mean,
Yeah.
whatever happened runs before me, and I see I could have done this better. I should have said this. Why did you say this? These kind of retrospection and introspection used to continue. But I must say, the second half of my career, by the time the positive symptoms were well in check, initially they were there, but by the time I got to the point where they were in check, and I only had to tackle with negative themselves.
Yeah, see, I think any day supported employment and staying employed is one of the biggest ways to combat stigma associated with serious mental illnesses. So that way, jobs and any employment or staying productive in some kind of patient is extremely important to the individual. But I was fascinated by what Ganesh was explaining about the way he was coping with his mild symptoms that he described. What Ganesh is suggesting needs a lot of awareness, a lot of understanding and acceptance about the diagnosis and the symptoms, which goes a long way in handling these symptoms and continuing to remain productive. So when we talk about what kind of jobs that are possible, I think if we can accept reality, not everybody will be able to go back to the jobs that they were performing with, which can, they may have to accept and settle down for a job that is a little lower than what they were doing. I mean, less demanding, less stressful, and more flexible timings. And when they're able to do that on a regular basis for some time, they may be able to go back to their previous jobs like they wanted to.
Right.
It's only when we try pushing towards doing only that they were doing before, they end up remaining unemployed, or they are not able to stick on to jobs that they are able to join because of various reasons. They can have difficulties in their cognitive faculties which will affect their functioning, and that is going to make them even more depressed, and they feel their self-esteem takes a beating when they are not able to perform as before. Correct. So taking that is slightly less stressful and not necessarily at the same level as their previous job would be the best way to getting back into mainstream.
I think, Ganesh, you talked of this as well at some point, that, how when you're not, even though you're managing and you managed fairly well, there was still a feeling of, in your own mind, there was a feeling of inadequacy or not performing well enough. Do you want to kind of talk about it and how it kind of created, I guess, self-stigma as well?
Yeah, surely. One thing we all forget is that bottom line, we are all human beings. We are in a social surroundings. We have to go by them. I honestly felt inadequate till I started journaling, started writing about these things. It made me get over a lot of these negative feelings. The second thing which I have mentioned is understand that you're unique. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. You're a collection of atoms that never was and never will be again. And lastly, know your betterment in anything. You are inexorably getting better in some manner or another. You're learning. As time goes, you're learning. Right. I think these 3 points help a lot in coming to terms with your inadequacy, your innate sense of inadequacy. So once you have, of course, I have said this many times, there is no perpetual blue sky feeling. There is no such thing. Even if the normal people have their ups and downs, similarly, the patients also have their ups and downs. So once we know that we are being proactive and not reactive to every manifestation, we get to the point where the sense of inadequacy is also subsumed, and we carry on with a normal or.
And what type of mental illness clients can go to government jobs?
Unfortunately, as of now, there are no government jobs available for persons with serious mental illnesses. I think that the disability card and employment is still limited to persons with mental retardation. Sonia, I think, will be able to talk more about it if I'm right. And the other thing is, most of the time it is the kind of jobs that we are looking for which matters. In a government setting, if the job is, it has to match this person's individual capabilities. It's not that easy like a physical disability where, you know, there are certain kinds of jobs that are definitely possible for a person with a visual challenged, or if he is orthopedically challenged or hearing impaired. Unfortunately, in mental illness, the disability varies from individual to individual, and it is very difficult to say that this is a job this person can do. No, that the job matching is very difficult when it comes to mental illnesses, and so it has to be on a case by case basis, and we cannot have a one size fits all kind of rules for employment of persons with serious disability.
Oh, discipline.
Exercise. I mean, the changes it can bring about are phenomenal. I mean, a sedentary lifestyle is all good. If you want to come out of it, and if you want to work productively, go for that walk. Go for that 45-minute walk. Do those 15-minute stretches. Keep habits healthy. Eat well. Eat properly. I myself was a smoker for the longest time. I quit 10, 12 years back, and things change. Just change. One to feel the positive energy surging through oneself. Yes, I still need 9 to 10 hours of sleep, which is more than what a normal person would need. But yes, this change in lifestyle is important to complete recovery in terms of negative symptoms, and I think it helps to imbibe, or rather take the medicine and do what it will do best to kind of change your lifestyle. You allow it to work. You just it just happens.
Right.
Activity around you, picking up a good hobby, all these things make a big change in the lives of any individual, and it definitely goes an extra mile in the lives of persons with schizophrenia, living with schizophrenia. And avoiding alcohol, drugs is another important thing that I think Ganesh spoke about it beautifully. I think quitting nicotine helps very much, because nicotine and all the antipsychotic medication, they compete with each other in the body, and then when there is nicotine, the medicines are becoming less effective. So I think giving up on smoking and drinking will definitely help to improve both symptomatically and the quality of life. And having schizophrenia is not in any way a deterrent to normal living or happy living. I think Ganesh and Sriram are definite living proof, and I think Ganesh is someone who is still active with his writing. He's quite creative as well. The one message which I think is important for everyone to know, the audience, is if we are trying to intervene early, I mean, the earlier we identify the symptoms and the earlier we start on treatment, whether it is medical or otherwise, the better is the recovery, and we are able to minimize the disability that is caused by this progressive brain disorder.
Right. Thank you. More questions, and we are coming to the end. So I'll just do a quick wrap up. I think the key message that I got out of this was that, and I'm sure most people would have got out of it, that as well, is that employment does play a significant role in the self-esteem and satisfaction of people with schizophrenia. And I think most importantly, discipline is critical. So whether it is exercise, sleep, medications, reducing or eliminating addictive behavior like smoking or alcohol, etc., I think are all essentials. And as Dr. Mangala said, you should go out and socialize. You should be part of communities and do things that are that you enjoy. so that you can live productive and fulfilling lives. And I think it's important for employers to also know that it is possible, and it is something that they should consider, that there is talent out there that they may be missing out on if they exclude persons with mental illness from the workforce. Any last comments? And I think thank you to the panelists, Dr. Mangala, Sonia, Ganesh, and Sriram. Been very fascinating discussion, and I'm sure most people who have attended this and who will continue to will benefit from this. Yes, Dr. Mangala.
Schizophrenia, I think, doesn't define the person. It is just an add-on that has come somewhere midway in their life. So that I don't think somebody should allow to be defined by the illness. If the person has something more than the illness in him, and the person should believe that.
Right. Thanks. So again, to everybody, thank you out there. And if you have any experience to share or any question, do write into us. And any feedback on this, or if you want any other sessions, we've already got a question on dementia, but if there's anything else that we would like to have us do webinars on, please let us know. And thank you once again, everyone, and even the audience who's listening to it, for your time. Thank you.